If you make an effort for 31 days to study and learn any topic, you're going to greatly benefit from that effort. And we are on a pursuit of knowing God's wisdom. How do we discover God's wisdom and how do we apply it to our life? So we're reading through the book of Proverbs. This is God's great book of wisdom. There's 31 chapters and we're taking a chapter a day. Today is chapter 9. I want to highlight about 3 or 4 things that I think is going to greatly benefit your life. Chapter 9 is what we call the finale of the introduction of the book of Proverbs. So chapters 1 through 9, Solomon is giving us an introduction of this insight to God's wisdom by sharing all of these different principles that deal with many different areas of our life. And as we go through his cyclical style of teaching and bringing these principles in, wisdom begins to develop in our mindset, our beliefs, our understanding. I wanted to highlight just a few verses in chapter 9 because some of them are very familiar to us from the previous chapters, but there are some deeper truths that I want to bring out to us today. In verse 1 of chapter 9, he says, "Wisdom has built her house, and she has set up its 7 pillars." I love how he's personifying now wisdom as building a house and laying an incredible foundation. That one might ask, well, what are these 7 pillars and what do they represent? And there's some speculation or understanding that it could be that he's referring to maybe what was known as the 7 spirits of God that was mentioned in Isaiah chapter 11 and 2. Or maybe it could be James chapter 3, verse 17, where even James says this is that wisdom is given from God, from above. And he says these 7 things: it is pure, peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. We really don't have a clear understanding of what Solomon specifically was meaning about 7 pillars. But we do understand that he was personifying wisdom as laying a foundation for a house, and that there are pillars, there are truths that will support the house, making it stable and long-lasting. He mentions again in this chapter that it is the fear of the Lord that is the beginning of not only understanding or knowledge, but also wisdom, that this is the foundation of the house. There is no wisdom without this foundation of the fear of the Lord. Again, he mentions in verses 1 through 6 how wisdom is waiting for the listener, waiting for someone who is hungry to learn and gain wisdom. In verses 7 through 9, he gives us some practical ways of how we are to pass wisdom on to others. Like he says, do not rebuke mockers, or they will hate you. Rebuke the wise, and they will love you. Instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. In verses 7 through 9, he gives us practical wisdom on how to pass wisdom on to others. He says, it is a waste of your time to correct a mocker, a scorner, someone who ridicules all the time, someone who's making fun of everything, making light of everything, and making themselves feel like that they are perfect. They're doing everything great, and they feel like they're doing everything great. And it is so frustrating to have to set someone down and correct them when you know they're not going to receive it. He says it is wise rather to focus your time and energy on the person who embraces instruction, who wants to grow, who wants to learn, that they are wise and that they will become even wiser as you instruct them. In verses 10 through 12, again, he reestablishes the foundation of the house is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And he says, when you know God, like that word know is to intimately know God, when you know him, when you want to know who he is, what he likes, what he dislikes, and you're developing this relationship, this intimate relationship with God, when you know him, he says wisdom will come. In verses 13 through 18, he brings back into focus how a woman who has embraced the life of adultery is a fool. A woman or anyone who has embraced the life of adultery is foolish, that there are consequences for adultery, and that if we cannot resist adultery, that we are living a life as a fool. He gives us insight in verse 18 that sex is not only physical, but it is also spiritual. He says, but little do they know that the dead are there, that her guests are deep in the realm of the dead. that there is a deep soul and spiritual connection when sexual relationships are happening, and that there are spiritual implications when committing adultery, that the soul is in prison, and that there is a deep bondage that takes place, an emptiness, that joy begins to leave, there is anxiety that begins to come in someone's life, that our conscience is being bothered, but our soul and our spirit is being affected. It affects every aspect of your life, your body, your soul, and your spirit. And he is saying it is wise to stay away from adultery. As we have read through chapters 1 through 9, I'm working on this practical application that if someone was to ask me, Pastor Shannon, in a practical way, how do I gain God's wisdom? I want to share this with you, and this is kind of a work in progress. It is to actively know God, and that word know means to intimately know God. That's a daily relationship with Jesus Christ, that we pray, talk to Him, share your heart with Him, enjoy His presence, like don't rush to move out of His presence, enjoy His company, read His Word as a personal letter directed to you, doing your very best to study, comprehend, and seek ways to apply God's principles from His Word. I think if you take this working definition, if you will, how to gain wisdom, and if you think about these things, I believe if you work on knowing God through Jesus Christ, our relationship with Jesus, study His Word, get into His presence, talk to Him on a daily basis, I believe with all of my heart, wisdom is going to come in greater measures in your life. I pray you're encouraged to stay on the journey of seeking God's wisdom. And at the end of 31 days, we are going to see our lives impacted in incredible ways because we are making wise decisions.